Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. It's Tuesday, time to talk about some new releases coming out this Friday, July 14th. There's about 450 albums coming out this week. I got 10 on my list for today. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you go check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlists we put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. Well, like I said in the intro, there's a little over 450 albums coming out this week. I got 10 on the list today, so if there's something I don't talk about on the show today, make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what else you're looking forward to picking up this week. And like always, if you're unable to find any of these in your local brick and mortar stores, I'll put links down below. All these should be available online. So the one big release that I'm looking forward to this week looks like it's going to be a great jazz release. This is John Coltrane, Evenings at the Village Gate. John Coltrane with Eric Dolphy. It's going to run you about $40 online. This is a newly discovered or recently discovered, I don't know how recent it was, but recently discovered 90-minute performance at the legendary Village Gate in New York from I think it was August of 1961. Two of my favorite jazz musicians of all time, John Coltrane, Eric Dolphy. This is going to be a great, I'm sure this is a great performance that they did. This is going to be put out by Impulse. I'm sure it's going to sound, I love a lot of the live Coltrane stuff, like Live at Birdland, which is right on my shoulder right here. One of my favorite live jazz albums of all time. And, I haven't heard anything that Coltrane has done live that I've been, that hasn't sounded great. And I'm sure this is going to be another one of those great releases. This week you've also got Aerosmith has been slowly over the last couple of weeks or months has been reissuing a lot of their catalog. This is their debut album from 1973. It's already about $28 online, celebrating its 50th anniversary. This is this is all newly remastered from the original analog tapes. Everything that they've released this year has been that way, and so far these Aerosmith releases have sounded fantastic. This was like one of my early Aerosmith albums. I think the first Aerosmith album I got was probably Pump, and then probably Toys in the Attic, and then this one. So their debut album I've loved since I was probably 10, 11, 12 years old. Dream On, of course, was the big hit that was on that album. It's been one of their staple songs throughout their career. But the interesting thing was when the album was released, when that single was released in 73, it didn't really get popular outside of the Boston area. It wasn't until that song was reissued or re-released in 75, the full, because there's a single version of it, and then there's a full album version of it. I think it was the full album version that got reissued in 75, and that was one that got really huge and big, was number in the top 10 all over the Billboard charts there for a while. And so it's interesting that song didn't really catch on early on outside of the Boston area, but since then has been a huge track. So I was never a big fan of the Rolling Stones up until, I'd say probably within the last several years, I've been getting more and more into their music. Of course, I've loved some of the stuff that they did in like the earlier part of their career. Of course, the Painted Black and Sympathy for the Devil and all those great tracks from the 60s. But I've been slowly getting more and more into some of the deeper cuts from that period. Just recently got the Rolling Stones box set. Came out, it was reissued earlier this year. But so I've slowly kind of just rediscovered or discovered a lot of the stuff that I didn't really listen to from that earlier period of the Rolling Stones. But this week you got a reissue of Metamorphosis coming out. This was released in 75. This is a rarities album. It's got demos, rarities, outtakes, alternate versions, all from 64 to 70. So it's like, in my opinion, that real classic period from the Rolling Stones. It's got to run you about $30 online. There's a orchestral version of Out of Time on here, which is it's like the one big great track, in my opinion, on this album. But that was the version that was used in the Quentin Tarantino movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a great movie. It's a great track. I think, especially for $30, I don't think it's a bad price for this, but I think this album is at least worth owning for that one track. It is a great one. And then you've got Brian May and Friends, Starfleet Sessions coming out this week or being reissued this week. This is a big box set that they're doing. So this is the Starfleet project was released in 1983, celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. This is a 1 LP, 1 7-inch, and 2 CD box set. It's going to run you about $100 online. So you got a great lineup on here, at least. You got Brian May, Eddie Van Halen, Phil Chen, and Alan Gratz are on here. I was never a big fan of this. In my opinion, Brian May, I was never a big fan of any of the solo stuff that he did in his career. And this is a really interesting release because it's only 3 tracks. Yeah, and that's all the mini album was when it was released. The LP has just the 3 songs. You got Starfleet, Let Me Out, and Blues Breaker. The CDs have full album versions and single versions of those tracks. It also has live performances. It also has interviews on there. It also comes with a booklet and a badge, all for $100. I think is a lot for really what you're getting in this, which is just a bunch of versions of the same 3 songs. I guess if you're a big Brian May fan and you love some of the tracks on here, it is a good release. But $100, I think, is quite a bit for that release. There's a couple of really interesting late period R.E.M. albums coming out this week. You get Around the Sun, which was first released back in 2004. It was their 13th studio album. It's a double LP. It's going to run you $34 online. Around the Sun, at least in my opinion, is probably one of the most disappointing albums from R.E.M.'s career. There's a couple of songs I think have some really good promise on there, but it's, at least in my opinion, it sounds like R.E.M. really just kind of mailed in this album. It sounds like the effort isn't really behind the songs when they wrote them and recorded them. Like I said, I think it's a really disappointing album, but it is still a good album. I don't think R.E.M. ever released anything that was really bad. It's just one of those albums that's, in my opinion, is just an okay album, but could have been a lot better had they at least put a little bit more effort into it. And then you've also got Clapton and Now, which was released in 2011. It was their 15th and final studio album. It's going to run you about $30 online. So this is not my favorite R.E.M. album, but I think it is a huge improvement over the several albums that came out before it. It's an album where when R.E.M. went into the studio, I think it took them like 2 years to record this album, or a year and a half, or whatever it was to record it. But it sounds like a band that was, at least they knew going into the recording sessions that was going to be their last album. And I think the effort is there, and I think they really created some really great music, some of the best music of that late period from their career. But it's going to run you about $30 online. It's not a bad price. But I think both of those albums are worth picking up if you are an R.E.M. fan. And if you're just like a casual R.E.M. fan, I definitely recommend at least streaming Clapton and Now, because I think it's a really good album. This week, the Deftones are reissuing their self-titled album from 2003. It's their 4th studio album. It's on Ruby Red vinyl. It's a 20th anniversary release. It's going to run you about $24 online. So their self-titled album, I think, is more... It's a heavier album, it's a darker album, but I also think it's probably a little bit more musically diverse than anything that Deftones had done earlier in their career, at least on their first 3 albums. Even though I know a lot of people that love a lot of the earlier stuff, I think this is a great album, maybe one of the best albums that the Deftones ever released. This is also the last album by the Deftones to be produced by Terry Date, who did, I know he did their 2 or at least 1 or 2 previous albums. They might have done their first 3 albums. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but I know he did the last couple of albums before this one. And he didn't come back into the band or work with the band again until 2020. Like I said, if you're unfamiliar with Deftones, I think this is a great album to go back and stream and check out and kind of start from. And then this week, I don't talk about 7-inch albums a whole lot on the channel here, but you got Eric Clapton, Moon River, How Could We Know coming out this week. This is a 7-inch. It's running about $10 online. So this was recorded with Jeff Beck early part of last year. Of course, Jeff Beck unfortunately died in January of this year. So I think it was like April, like earlier part of last year when he did Moon River with him. Of course, Moon River, made famous by Audrey Hepburn from Breakfast at Tiffany's. I think it was 1961 when that movie came out. But this is I'm really looking forward to picking this up this week. This is also going to be available on streaming services if you want to check it out. And then the B-side on this is How Could We Know, which has Judith Hill, Simon Climie, and Daniel Santiago on it. So for $10, I think it's going to be a great one to pick up. Like I said, you can't go wrong with Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck. It's going to be a great song. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. The last 2 I got on the list are both great Joni Mitchell albums that are being reissued this week. The first one, this is Song to a Seagull, first released back in 1968. It's their debut album. It's running about $22 online. So this is a reissue of the 2021 remaster done by Bernie Grundman. I'm sure this is going to sound absolutely fantastic. So this album is really interesting because it is a really good album, but it's kind of a victim of the way it was recorded. So the album was produced by David Crosby, and David got this idea that he wanted to have more of a natural sound on the album from her vocals. So he had her sing into the grand piano that was in the studio there, and then he set up microphones around her. Well, unfortunately, those microphones picked up a bunch of ambient noise, and there was some distortion. They tried to fix it in post-production, and end up giving the album kind of this overall kind of a flat sound. So it doesn't sound all that great, even though there's some really good tracks on here. You know, had it been recorded more like a traditional way, I think it would have been a better album overall. Would have been more well received, I think. But so just kind of keep that in mind. It is an album we're streaming if you haven't listened to it before. Like I said, there is some really good tracks on there, but sound-wise, it just doesn't sound the best. So you got that coming out this week, and then you've also got Clouds being reissued. This was her second studio album. It was released back in 1969. It's going to run you about $24 online. This was her big breakthrough album. I think it reached number like 30 or 31 on the Billboard charts here in the U.S. Of course, she did some great stuff after this album was released also, but this was like the one big album that really kind of made her really famous. It's one worth checking out. If, like I said, same with her song for Seagull. If you're unfamiliar with this album, definitely check it out. It is a great one. So unlike her first album, unlike her debut album, she produced this one herself. So it's got a great sound to it. Like, she did a great job with it. She also painted the artwork that ended up being the artwork for the album cover. It is a great album. I love a lot of Joni Mitchell stuff from the late 60s and early, actually all the way through the 70s. She did a lot of great stuff. But, you know, this like really started a really classic period in Joni's career. Well, that's all I got for today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up this week. There's a couple of stuff I'm definitely going to grab. I'm definitely going to grab that Coltrane album. Love jazz music. Coltrane's my favorite musician. I love all the live stuff that they've released from him. I'm also probably going to grab the Aerosmith album just because I think the pressing I have is, I think, the original pressing. It's a little beat up. I know these remasters all sound fantastic, so I'm probably going to grab that one. Probably going to grab that Eric Clapton 7-inch also. You know, I'm not a big 7-inch fan. I'm really looking forward to that release. Kind of on the fence, maybe grab one of those R.E.M. releases also. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.